I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. Thank you so much. The phone number, you can text me this morning, 870-275-9799. Coming up, we'll be talking with Mr. Tim Loggins coming up at 6:33. Going to talk a little bit about, bills, legislation, things like that, the Second Amendment, constitutional carry. Might want to actually get Tim's reaction to Stephanie Flower, Senator Flower's outburst that happened a week ago. Also, coming up next hour, we're going to air the interview. I sat down with Victor Davis Hanson. You see him on Fox News. He's a historian, a scholar, really an intellectual that takes what I believe to be a very objective view of President Trump's presidency, why he won, why he'll win again. Matter of fact, we got into a pretty interesting conversation, me and Mr. Hanson, and I'll just kind of preview it a little bit. He believes, because I asked him this, it went into Trump. We went into this the phony Trump-Russia collusion insurance policy. By the way, unbelievable developments when it comes to the testimony of Bruce Orr being released, the testimony now of Lisa Page being released, where they said some really, quite frankly, some amazing revelations out of this whole thing. Just in terms of that they wanted to prosecute Hillary, and Loretta Lynch and the Justice Department said, no, you're not going to prosecute Hillary. Everybody had this understanding. They thought that at the time, I remember it was July 4th weekend, James Comey comes out, and people thought that maybe James Comey was attempting to go around Loretta Lynch, doing everything he could. No, they were getting the controversy out there so it would die by election time. That's what they were doing. Anyway, I asked Victor Davis Hanson. Again, he's going to be on. We're going to play the interview. I sat down with him 2 days ago to record this. His new book is really good, The Case for Trump. And I asked him, I said, when it comes to declassification of all of these FISA documents, that's going to expose these top-level officials of the FBI who no longer work at the FBI. When President Trump actually does that, I asked him, I said, do you think that he hasn't declassified those because the Mueller report hasn't been released yet? And that's to say that if President Trump were to expose all of the people that are coming after him as criminals, we all know what the mainstream media would do, right? If Trump were to expose all of these top guys in the FBI as criminals and give the proof for it, and maybe even prosecute some of them before the Mueller report is released, assuming the Mueller report's going to find no Russia collusion, it would look pretty bad. The media would just say, oh, he's going after the people that are going after him, right? That's what they would say. And anyway, Victor Davis Hanson agreed with that, and he expanded on that some more. So we'll give you that coming up at 7:33. Jackie, I want to say hello to Jackie. Jackie on Facebook writing, good morning, Conduit News, my Arkansas news choice. Well, Jackie, we appreciate you listening very much, and to everybody out there who's listening. Lavelle, Roger, Lynn, Robert, Gary, Ty, we appreciate you guys tuning in this morning for Conduit News Radio. You can find out more at conduitnews.com. Matter of fact, the Week 8 scorecard is posted at conduitnews.com. A little later in the program, we're probably going to get to one of the bills that was heard yesterday. One of the bills that was heard yesterday had to do with disclosing of donors. We talked about this. This is a bill that is that is not supported. It is in the opposed category. With the judicial elections and making these nonprofit groups that can put out information about candidates but cannot advocate for a specific candidate, meaning go vote for person A, but they can tell you facts about this person. They can tell you things that are truthful, or have or it's possible. Let's be clear, because this was brought up yesterday by State Representative Jimmy Gasway. It's possible to give people the truth and mislead them, because they're leaving out information that would put things into perspective, and that's true. That is true. They brought up, he didn't bring up by name, but there was a judge who ran for the Supreme Court by the name of Kenneth Hickson. And Kenneth Hickson, and we're going to get into this later in the program, but Kenneth Hickson he came on my program here, and he gave a great interview. Of course, judicial elections are just popularity contests because they're nonpartisan. Judicial elections should be partisan. They should. To claim that judges are nonpartisan is denying the fact that there are two different ways to interpret the law. One that where the words change after the fact, and one where the definitions of words don't change after the fact. And that's very clear. There are two philosophies. They are competing philosophies, and those competing philosophies find homes within the two major political parties. You can see how logical this is, but they want to pretend like the judicial elections are somehow different, and we just don't get it. I don't get it at all. Anyway, so they have this judge, Kenneth Hickson, and I believe it was the Judicial Crisis Network. They ran an ad saying that he let a convicted child rapist go free, and you need to call Kenneth Hickson, and make sure that you tell him that he needs to protect our kids. Okay. Well, that's true. That's exactly what happened. What you don't know is that Kenneth Hickson had to let the guy go because it was a technicality in a lower court. Somebody messed up. Guess what? It's following the law. It was a technicality. So there is definitely a way to mislead people with factual statements. I'll agree with that, right? But then there's also the ability to talk about factual statements that are clearly just outrageous on their face and get people riled up. And I want that free speech. I want that information. It's just, can you tolerate temporary evils? And many of us want government to take care of temporary evils in our society, temporary ones, not big ones, not these, not things that you have to do something about, like that it's just so urgent, but temporary evils. And that's what Milton Friedman said. We used to have him on. We used to have Milton Friedman, his audio on the show at the top of every hour. The maintenance of a free society is difficult to maintain. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make things worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere. So the solution to this temporary evil, that truth can somehow be misleading sometimes if you leave other information out, is that you're going to make people disclose their associations, and you're going to attack freedom of speech and freedom of association by making people disclose their donors. And it's only in judicial elections. Well, it's only in a certain level of judicial elections. By the way, this bill passed out of committee yesterday with flying colors. Americans for Prosperity spoke against it. Josh Waters spoke against it. We're going to bring you that audio. But again, you're going to spread your results. You're going to spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere. And here's the thing. This is why this is so important. I need to remind you. I'm sorry, because I got some blowback on the show yesterday. We're talking about this bill. My computer is messing up. I'm telling you, I can't. I'm trying to pull this. Trying to pull the bill number up here, and my computer is just having the hardest time this morning. But anyway, need I remind you that back when Conduit put their scorecard out, Conduit for Commerce, this was a year or so ago. The now President Pro Temp of the Senate asked to see our donors. He asked to see. He wanted donors to have to be disclosed because he thought there was some conspiracy or something. Any attempt, I don't care if it's only in judicial elections, to attack freedom of speech and freedom of association and being able to spend the money you want to spend with the group you want to spend, that's a legal group that's allowed to that's not allowed to advocate directly for a candidate, but it's allowed to put out information that's pertinent to an election or anything else, I'm going to be against 100%. Let me see what is this bill again? This is HB 1705. So it did pass the House Judiciary Committee yesterday. And anyway, we've got the audio. It's pretty good stuff. I thought Mr. Josh Waters did an excellent job, by the way. And so we'll bring that we'll bring all of that to you. Oh my goodness, did you hear about this? I know you have. Aunt Becky, Uncle Jesse's wife, may be going to jail or paying a lot of money in fines. I'll tell you that much right now. I don't know if parole officers are going to be as easy to bribe as athletic coaches at universities, but we're about to find out, aren't we, folks? For those of you who were living under a rock yesterday, there were some sealed indictments that were unsealed yesterday. And boy, is this scandal not huge? And I'm telling you, there are more parents that are probably going to get arrested. I bet it was a very long night for some parents who've done things similar. And this is I feel like this goes well beyond the schools that were mentioned in it. For those of you who don't know, actresses and CEOs were arrested yesterday in a nationwide college admissions cheating scam. Also fashion designers, because Aunt Becky's husband is actually Massimo. You remember we used to have Massimo T-shirts? A lot of people my age remember Massimo. So her name is actually Lori Loughlin. She played Aunt Becky on Full House, which was on the famous TGIF lineup on ABC. She also is now in a bunch of Hallmark Lifetime movies, I'm pretty sure. I think she's probably in like every Christmas movie. I don't know why. I've got family that just absolutely love these Hallmark movies. Anyway, watch them while you can, folks. Because we certainly love to edit history, don't we? All right. Here is what exactly happened here. This is fascinating to me. Some people are wondering about the students here. They have a scheme where, in some cases, they're taking stock photos of athletes and photoshopping their children's faces into the photos so that the athletic coach can then go to the university and at least justify, hey, this is an athletic recruit, even though they haven't played the sport a day in their life. And then once they get to college, and this is assuming that they didn't cheat on their ACT and SAT, which is another part of this huge racketeering scam. They were also donating to a nonprofit to pay this guy. And, of course, they were taking the tax breaks for it. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And, of course, probably all of these people are big Democrats and voting for liberals and complaining about white privilege and everything else. That's an assumption, but that's my speculation anyway. So here it is. There are about 50 defendants named in total. Many consist of two people with the same last name, likely parents. Allegedly, they conspired to, 1, bribe college exam administrators to facilitate cheating on college entrance exams. 2, bribe varsity coaches and administrators at elite universities to designate certain applicants as recruited athletes or favored candidates. And 3, they used the facade of a charitable organization to conceal the nature and source of the bribe payments. The affidavit also describes parties, quote, having a third party take classes in place of the actual students, with the understanding that grades earned in the class would be submitted as part of the students' college applications, and submitting falsified applications with fraudulently obtained scores, fake awards, and fake athletic activities. The institutions affected are Yale, Stanford, University of Texas, University of Southern California, University of California, Los Angeles, and others. Can you imagine if you're a kid going to the University of Texas, and you don't know anything about this? I think most of the kids probably knew what was going on, but maybe some of them didn't. And they wake up today and they're realizing that they're so stupid that their parents had to basically Truman Project their entire collegiate experience. They didn't realize that this whole thing was just orchestrated just for them to get into Texas, not Yale, but Texas. Come on, man. You gotta think. Oh man, there's some soul searching going on right now. See, I'm just saying, right? Wouldn't that be tragic? That's a part of this tragedy here. The institution through which much of this activity allegedly occurred was the Edge College and Career Network, LLC, referred to as The Key, based in Newport, California. 3 cooperating witnesses have agreed to support the government's case in exchange for leniency. They've already pled guilty to certain charges. One was a head coach of women's soccer at Yale. Also, Wake Forest and Georgetown are mentioned. The college entrance exam cheating thing is really the thing that makes me, I think, the most angry. It's just because standardized testing is so hard, and it doesn't. It takes a lot of practice. A lot of these kids, they practice for the ACT, they practice for the SAT. But if you have a rich, celebrity actress or CEO, mom and dad, they could just pay to get you a good score. How long has this been going on, by the way? I know the investigation's been going on since like 2011 or something. The first cooperating witness allegedly instructed clients of The Key to seek extended time on the ACT by claiming to have a disability. Further, the witness told his clients to change the location of the exam to one of the 2 he controlled in Houston, Texas, and West Hollywood, California. The clients would be told to fabricate a reason to justify the change of location, such as a bar mitzvah or a wedding. There, the witness had established relationships with test administrators who accepted bribes to facilitate cheating. The first cooperating witness would bribe test administrators to allow a third party, often the second cooperating witness, to serve as a purported proctor for the exams while actually providing students with the correct answers or reviewing and correcting the students' answers after they completed the exam. In many instances, the students taking the exams were unaware that their parents had arranged for this cheating. That's a quote from the affidavit. Clients paid $15,000 to $75,000 per test for this service, and the first witness would pay the second witness or administrators $10,000 per test to allow it. This money was drawn out of an alleged charity account. The first cooperating witness, we'll just call CW1, like the affidavit, would earn the trust and confidence of clients by saying he had done the same thing many times before. On a court-authorized wiretap, he said that it works every time, and the students often were oblivious to the cheating, pleased with their improved scores, and eager to take the exam again to do even better. We're going to take a break here. Wild stuff with these indictments coming down. Back in a minute.
The Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Arkansas, Tim Griffin's on the line. Tim, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. I saw that you came out last week with a statement on the work President Donald Trump and Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos are doing when it comes to education and school choice. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, look, this is something that is long overdue in Arkansas. Now, I was praising in that particular instance the Trump-DeVos proposal, but it reflects legislation that failed in our legislature a couple of years ago, I guess it was. That was a sort of a tax credit school choice bill. What it does is basically the federal proposal that President Trump proposed and the one that we had that failed a couple of years ago.
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready to loan. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so Fort Smith rejected the tax increase to fund the U.S. Marshals Museum. Way to go, citizens of Fort Smith. This is huge. It once again shows that the people of Arkansas don't like tax increases. In other news, Asa Hutchinson signed a measure to increase your taxes to pay for roads. Hutchinson signs measure for road funds. Michael Wickline writes, on taxes, fees, governor anticipates public support. So he thinks the public is going to be totally fine with this. Taxing your gas twice, taxing it at the wholesale level and taxing it at the pump, and referring to you, $200 million, $300 million, what I believe tax increases, because the half-cent sales tax is set to expire, and they're trying to stop it from expiring. So, anyway, but Fort Smith, good job, Fort Smith, for rejecting this tax increase proposal. 6,726 of you voted against it. Only 3,670 of you voted for it. And these are unofficial results reported by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Joey McCutcheon quoted as saying, I think the people of Fort Smith have sent a loud and clear message that we need to focus on our priorities. We support the museum, but we do not support it being paid for with public funds. We're going to take a break. Back in a moment.
I think that was that was Representative Dodson's bill. It would have done at the state level what President Trump's trying to do at the federal level. And it basically, the setup is this: you identify some nonprofits, some foundations, 501c3s, and you give tax credits or some sort of tax benefit, in this instance tax credit, to donors, people who are interested in supporting school choice, for their donations to that entity. So I'll just mention one in particular here. So there is a 501c3 right now in Arkansas, ACE Scholarships. And what they do is they basically give scholarships to kids who could be better served going to a school other than the one they go to, and they help them go to that school financially. Well, what it would do is it would give people, taxpayers who want to donate to ACE, for example, and I'm just using that as one example, it would give them a tax credit. So you're incenting Arkansans, or in the Trump proposal case, incenting Americans to support school choice through a nonprofit. And there are many different ways to support school choice. This way in particular does not, it sort of make moot the point that you'll hear from some people, well, I don't want taxpayer dollars going here, going there, money that would otherwise go to a public school. I don't want that going to here or there. So in this case, you've got a nonprofit that is supporting school choice, basically paying for the school that's best for the student. And, I've got a really broad definition of school choice. Whatever's best for the kid and the parents, right? I mean, that ought to be, we ought to be able to start with that premise, agree on that. Some kids are going to be better suited at a traditional public school or a charter public school, because charter schools are public schools. Homeschooling, private school, parochial school, religious school, whatever is best for the student is the focus that I like to emphasize. And you're going to hear some kids in the background just because I'm en route to school. But here's the point I like to make, Paul, over and over. What if I told you
the intersection of conservative ideas and reality? Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
A Hallmark movie. A Hallmark movie starring Lori Loughlin, where she goes to jail. Hey, folks, welcome to the program. We got Mr. Tim Loggins with the Patriots of X746. Tim, how are you this morning?
I am doing great, Paul. Good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning to you. I want to remind everybody, the Patriots of X746, they're on a mission to educate citizens of Arkansas about their gun rights, constitutional carry. You don't need a permit to carry open or concealed. Tim, I wanted to get your reaction yesterday, or I guess want to get your reaction from what happened last week with Senator Stephanie Flowers having an absolute meltdown. What was your reaction to that?
Well, Paul, you're talking about the HB 1059 bill that Aaron Pilkington was going to run in the House, that Senator Ballinger basically kidnapped and said, everyone get out of the way, I'm going to run this bill. And if you recall last week, we told you that we were withdrawing our support.
Yes.
Because of that. We were afraid it would turn into a fiasco like it did. And it seemed like we had inside information, I guess. But, I mean, everyone's, throwing a fit and all up in arms about Senator Flowers and her tirade, her rant in committee. And, Paul, I want to let everybody know that that's not the real story. Why are we surprised that a Democratic senator is against a bill for people to be able to defend themselves? The real story is that the Arkansas Sheriff's Association, the chiefs of police, the prosecutors in Arkansas, the Arkansas State Police, they testified against the people's ability to defend themselves regardless of where they're located at. I want y'all to think about this.
Yeah, that is a good bet. That is a much bigger story. Go ahead, Tim.
And the Senator Flowers thing is actually detracting from that real story. And it's kind of like, the shiny object. Well, obviously we don't condone that behavior, but why are we surprised by it? We see that every day on television, on the news. Democrats, argue from emotion, not from facts. And so we should expect that. But we should also expect that our law enforcement officials support the right of people to defend their lives against criminals. And we didn't get that with that bill that Senator Ballinger ran.
No, we didn't. I do have to point out, though, Tim, that if any one of us, if anybody else had done what, Senator Flowers had done, especially if they were a witness or something, they'd have been arrested.
Well, and I'm not going to argue that the behavior was appropriate, Paul. That's not.
No, I know. I'm just making that point. Matter of fact, I think I saw you make that point on Facebook. You said, or maybe it was on one of the live feeds or something. I mean, if I'd have behaved that way, I'd have been arrested. And
that's true. There's nothing. But the problem is, Paul, is this isn't the first time Senator Flowers has come out emotionally against an issue. It's what her constituents probably expect from her. She is an elected official, and that's a Senate business to take care of that. That's an in-house kind of thing. And the real story is it's detracting from public servants, such as the sheriffs and the chiefs of police, testifying against citizens' rights to be able to defend themselves no matter where they're located at. Mm-hmm. That's huge. That should be covered.
Yeah, that's true. You are right. I wonder why the Sheriff's Association is so worried about this, because I mean it's not. I guess I don't understand it. I mean, I thought law enforcement officers, especially around here, thought an armed society is a politer society, and also a lot of times law enforcement officers, they get to a crime well after it's been committed and there's already victims. I
want to be clear, Paul. It's not all sheriffs. I said the Sheriff's Association. As a matter of fact, HB 1694, which is going to be the elimination of gun-free zones in Arkansas, recently Sheriff Chris Brown of Claiborne County wrote an open letter to the public and to the Sheriff's Association. The Sheriff's Association voted to oppose that bill as well.
Really?
And yes, they did. And Sheriff Brown came out against their vote and said, look, I swore an oath to the Constitution of the state of Arkansas. I swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States. And yes, I swore an oath to uphold the laws, but my oath to defend the Constitution outweighs that oath to defend the laws if the laws are unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important. That's an important role of sheriffs. And I appreciate Sheriff Brown making a public stance on that.
Tell me about 1694. It's House Bill 1694. It's by State Representative Richard Womack. Tell me about it.
1694 will basically eliminate gun-free zones in Arkansas with some exceptions. The emotional argument from the left is going to be that we're going to allow guns in schools. That's a lie. It's still a federal crime to carry on school property. It does not do that, and it still makes exceptions that no guns are allowed in prisons or jails or child abuse services. No guns are allowed, in courtrooms and some other important areas. No guns allowed during collegiate sporting events. And we're still working on the process and doing the amendments, and Representative Womack needs to be applauded and carrying this fight forward. But there's a lot of misinformation about what it does.
Well, what's the misinformation?
Well, it doesn't make guns everywhere. That's number one. That's the argument that moms demand action. Like I said, we've got exceptions written in there that are common sense. We don't want someone carrying a gun into a prison. Mm-hmm. That's the escape risk, the assault risk. We don't want someone carrying a gun into, a courtroom that's in the middle of a custody battle.
Right.
And oh, by the way, these areas where the exceptions are, they have metal detectors, they have armed staff, they have checkpoints, and they're not stopping law-abiding citizens, they're stopping criminals as well. Mm-hmm. And that's the key to it. The places that can't be controlled, criminals don't listen to the law. And they count on the fact that citizens are going to be disarmed. And so those places that can't be controlled, where they can't control criminals, citizens only have a right to carry weapons to defend themselves, and that's what this bill does.
Okay, so this will go through the House Judiciary Committee, I'm assuming at some point soon, and it seems like this is common sense. I mean, it seems like this is just, especially if you still have the exemptions for prisons, it's still a federal crime. You can't carry it in a school. Not going to be able to carry it at sporting events and things like that. Seems like, I mean, I don't know why the Democrats wouldn't. I mean, seems like that's kind of what we have now, Tim.
Well, Paul, you need to understand that the Democrats are going to argue from emotion, and we're arguing from fact. Now, let's look at the Arkansas Constitution, Article 2, Section 2. I want to read that to you. I want to read part of it. All men are created equally free and independent and have certain inherent and inalienable rights, amongst which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty. You get that? Enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property and reputation, and of pursuing their own happiness. 2. Article 2, Section 5, the citizens of the state of Arkansas shall have the right to keep and bear arms for their common defense. Article 2, Section 29, that says that the government cannot pass laws affecting the rights I just read you. So you look at gun-free zones in Arkansas, on their face, they are unconstitutional. And that's the argument from fact. Now, Democrats are going to have the emotional argument that, we don't want guns everywhere, as if you can pass a law and criminals are going to follow it. We can't carry a cop in our pocket, Paul. It's that simple. And we have to have the right to defend our lives, our loved ones, our property, wherever we're at. And 1694 does that. Wow.
I mean, I'm excited, I'm excited for State Representative Richard Womack to run the bill. I think, if I'm thinking of that committee right now on guns, on the Second Amendment, I think you guys should have the votes to get it out. But you're saying the Sheriff's Association is going to oppose this bill too?
Well, they took a vote, and it's one of those secret votes where it's not in public, and they opposed the bill, and there's no logical reason to oppose it unless you just don't want the citizens to be able to defend themselves. Unless you're just opposed to people keeping and bearing arms, there's no logical reason. There's emotional reasons, pandering to your constituents.
Yeah, but I feel like, that's something that the Democrats could say that with the people that elected them there. But I don't know, some of these sheriffs, man, like I just got to feel like most of the people that elect them are very much in support of the Second Amendment, very much in support of being able to carry. And we're talking about a human right, a natural human right, self-defense and self-preservation, the most basic instinct. And that's the whole point behind guns, or being able to carry guns in the Second Amendment. Go ahead.
Paul, you remember the Sheriff's Association came down there the second day of the resolution on constitutional carry in Arkansas, and they testified against us. They testified against Senator Ballinger on stand your ground. They voted to oppose 1694. I kind of see a pattern there. Now, the problem is most folks don't realize that the Sheriff's Association actually lobbies our legislature on laws and on bills. And their sheriff is able to come back to their home district and say, I completely support your right to, keep and bear arms. I affirm the Second Amendment. But then they have a vote that's not recorded for the public, and they come out for or against these bills that are being run. Mm-hmm. And you should ask for clarity on your sheriff, and you should also ask for them to make a public statement. If the Sheriff's Association, opposes a bill that your sheriff says they support, then they should come out publicly and say so. Hey, I don't agree with the Sheriff's Association.
I was listening to some of the conversations after that resolution passed out of the House to clarify gun rights, that Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, that passed the House. And I was listening to some of the Sheriff's Association's arguments. And, to me, I think much of what they're frustrated with is because of the decriminalization aspect of the law in Arkansas when it comes to carrying a weapon. That means that they're now going to have to change their tactics when they police the citizens. And I'm like, okay, well, amend your policy and change the way you understand what I'm saying, Tim? To me, that's such an easy fix, so that the citizen, instead of opposing basic liberty, it'd be much easier and much more acceptable just to change your policies when it comes to policing, right?
Well, we could do an hour-long show on this. I mean, first of all, we need to realize that law enforcement swears an oath to uphold the Constitution of the state and the Constitution of the United States. That's their foremost duty. And unfortunately, instead of peace officers, we have law enforcement officers. And so we could have a whole hour talking about that, and then another hour talking about the lack of training, continuing education for law enforcement. And then we could do another hour segment on how do we hold the few that are bad accountable so it doesn't give the many that are good a bad name.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a huge conversation about law enforcement we need to have in this state, and unfortunately we don't have time today to talk about it. But yes, sir, change your policies to reflect that you're upholding your oath.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about.
That's exactly right. Change the policies to reflect you're upholding your oath. That is exactly great. That's a great statement. We're talking with Tim Loggins. He's with the Patriots of Act 746. You should search for them on Facebook. Go to facebook.com and search for Patriots of Act 746. Ask to become a member of the grassroots sensation today. You guys are having a meeting, Northeast Arkansas chapter, having a meeting in Harrisburg this Saturday, Tim, right? What can you tell us about it?
It's going to be at 2:30 at Mills in Harrisburg. Paul, we've had 150 new members join us in the last 30 days. This meeting, we're going to have Representative Dwight Tosh has committed to coming. Senator Dave Wallace has committed to coming. I anticipate that we'll have, Representative Craig Christensen, maybe Dan Sullivan, maybe Johnny Wright can make it. There's going to be a lot of legislators there talking about what we're doing this session to broaden freedom and restore rights. And we're going to have that conversation about what are your gun rights, what are the laws in Arkansas. No permit is needed to carry a weapon openly or concealed. And man, I'm excited to be a patriot right now. We're 150 folks in 30 days.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Tim, and by the way, I want everybody to know, if you haven't seen Tim Loggins conduct a meeting of the Northeast Arkansas chapter of Patriots of Act 746, you are in for a treat, my friend. You are passionate when you conduct these meetings, and you can really tell, Tim, that you want your liberty back, man.
It's all about getting folks up off the couch, get them involved. Paul, you're right. I am passionate about this. I've been talking about these gun-free zones for a year and a half with Patriots. I've spoken about this all over the state of Arkansas. We're shifting the conversation to liberty, restoring rights, becoming constitutional, letting folks know that, you know what, you've been lied to, you've been indoctrinated. Here's what the Constitution said. I mean, how many folks have read Article 2, Section 2 of the Arkansas Constitution? How many folks have read Article 2, Section 29? Let alone Article 2, Section 5 that says you have a right to keep and bear arms. And, if you're not educated on what the law says and what the Constitution says, how do you know when your rights are being violated?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's exactly right. Tim Loggins, I appreciate it, sir. It's always great to have you on.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate you.
All righty. Tim Loggins, everybody. Again, facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746, and ask to become part of the Facebook group. Let's see here. Robert on Facebook writing, secrecy is the tool of tyrants. Robert, that's true. A lot of people are saying that they want the Sheriff's Association, when all the sheriffs get together and vote on whether or not they're going to oppose or support a piece of legislation, that they should make those votes public, that they shouldn't tell the citizens out of one side of their mouth that they support the Second Amendment and then oppose the Second Amendment by saying they don't want the Sheriff's Association, or more importantly, they want the Sheriff's Association to speak against a bill that will enhance the freedom of the citizens And again, it's all about make your law enforcement policy conform with the oath that you took to uphold the Arkansas Constitution and the Constitution of the United States. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Go to conduitnews.com for more. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
You can only shop. You can only shop down the road from where you live in the district that the government has drawn up for you.
Yeah, you know, I got a Walmart. I got a Walmart basically in my backyard, and I like Walmart, but I like to go to Kroger sometimes too, and that's on the other side of town.
Well, what if they said, what if you had a sort of an older Walmart? Nothing against that, and then you had a big super Walmart where you could get both your groceries and your traditional homewares all in the same place. And you said, you know, I could go to the Walmart by my house, but if I go to the one on the other side of town, then I can get not only my homeware stuff, but I can get all my groceries too. And then someone said, whoa, where are you going, sir? I need to see you walk in the Walmart, and they said, I need to see your card. I said, what card? Well,
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Oh, well, I'm back. Folks, telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to text me this morning. 870-275-9799. We just told you about this, but it's a big deal. The citizens of Fort Smith, we tried to cover this. We probably talked about this. I know we had Joey McCutcheon on a couple times, had another gentleman on a couple times, talked to Frank Glidewell as well. And we're trying to get the word out to the people of Fort Smith who are listening to us. Ironically enough, on the Marshall about a tax increase to fund the Marshall Museum. And, of course, tax increases are what the government does when they don't have the guts to govern. They don't actually have the intestinal fortitude to govern, meaning they don't have, and that may be because they don't have a consensus to cut spending or get priorities in line. There may be people who are all for cutting spending, but they just, they know that there's not the political will to cut spending and allocate the money for roads, so they go along with the tax increase because they think the roads have to be, fixed and maintained and everything else. We've gone over the other side's arguments. I understand. I disagree. But I understand how people cast a vote for that tax increase. But I think it just goes to show you that the mentality down there is never about keeping government the same size. I would like for it to shrink, but we're just talking about keeping it the same size. The conversation that the governor has, the environment, the political environment down there is always starts at the negotiating table with the question, how much is government going to grow? It's already assumed that it will grow. That is the conversation every single time. I mean, if you look at the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, you look at this Hutchinson. Go to the front page of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Hutchinson signs measure for road funds, and you see this photo here, right? And you have all these people here who are there, all these legislators who made this possible. The governor signing it. It's a photo. A lot of people. I got a text message last night. Caption this photo. I don't know. What would you caption? And then I told them it's not a tax increase. I mean, this stuff is frustrating to people. They are, we have had an income tax reduction, which is great. Now we have the increases in our gas tax. They're double taxing gasoline. We also have referring a 0.5-cent sales tax to the people. We just got word on Monday or this weekend, there's a tobacco tax. They want to increase cigarette taxes to raise $100 million and maybe it make some provision for lower income Arkansans. I can only assume that's Randy Bauer's dream of an earned income tax credit, which is what the Democrats want, which is just more welfare. See, what else do we have? We have the 911 tax increase coming down the pike, which is going to raise taxes on your cell phones. That's going to, in order to fund 911, meaning if you're against raising taxes on cell phones, then you're against the 911 system, you barbarian, you. What, do you want us to go back to the Stone Age, Paul? In reality, their argument is the same. No, we need the money because people are using cell phones and not landlines, just like people are using more electric cars and more fuel-efficient cars, and that's why we must go back to the people and ask more money instead of admitting that revenue to the government is more and more and more and more every year. And the people in power refuse to take that money and put it towards things that a vast majority of Arkansans agree upon, like funding our roads. We are already giving the government massive amounts of money to do these things that we agree the government should do, like build our roads. And these guys are too busy and obsessed with Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's the real culprit here. You want to know why you're going to pay more at the pump? It's Blue Cross Blue Shield and the non-existent line between government and insurance companies in the state of Arkansas. That's the real reason we're paying more at the pump. Don't forget that. I drove by my gas station the other day, and that I normally drive by. It's back up to $2 and something. I think it was $2.17, and I'm thinking 3 more cents. That makes it $2.20. It's a lot of money. It really is. We are taxed way too much already. Back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
To see your arbitrarily drawn government card that shows this is the Walmart you're assigned to. you would be like, really? Are you kidding me? This is America. This is freedom. This is choice, right? I want to go where I want to go. What if on a even more serious scale, what if someone said you can only go to the doctor in your specific zone? Y'all ready to go? In your specific zone. You'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm going to go to the best doctor that I can possibly go to because I want to live. I want to be healthy. And they said, the government said, whoa. You got to go to the one in your district. I mean, that's what, we do this. I'm not making light of it, but this is what we do. It's freezing outside. This is what we do every day with education. We basically say, hey, this is where you live. This is where you go. Now, we've made some progress on that front with regard to public school choice, but we haven't gone much further than that. Now, there's some exceptions to that. We have the Succeed Scholarship, which is a great deal if you have a child who may have a learning disability or some type of development disability, then there are scholarships available for them. And I think that, and I say scholarships, they can get taxpayer assistance to go where they get the best education. Here's the crazy thing, Paul. That passed, I think, unanimously. But when you try to expand that to other populations, people start voting against it. So you're like, wait a minute. You saw the value in doing this for kids that have learning disabilities or what have you, but you want to expand it. People start opposing it when you want to expand that to lower income students, or what about military? We've talked a lot about the position that military kids are in, because they can't always control where they live,
right?
Because the military says you got to go here, and so when you start to expand this and say, hey, why don't we let all kids get the education best for them? You start getting opposition, and the reason I'm talking about this now is, number one, obviously the Trump DeVos proposal, which is a great one. Basically, what it would do is the same thing I was talking about. It would give a federal tax credit, federal tax, dollar for dollar, not a deduction, but a credit for what you give to that nonprofit. So the nonprofit I mentioned earlier, if someone wanted to give $5,000 to that, they would get dollar for dollar credit toward the taxes they owe.
Wow!
And there's a limit on that. But I'm talking about it now too, and this is what I really want to mention. This bill that I'm talking about at the state level has not been filed. And you may say, well, man, it's getting late. What's the deal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they've been trying to shore up support in the drafting, and they can't. Apparently, they still can't get enough Republicans to support school choice. Because they don't want to introduce it if it's dead on arrival. They're trying to keep it. I guess they're still drafting it to try to get it to where some of the people on the committee will support it.
Yeah.
I would say to Republicans, read the platform.
Yeah, what do we do? What do we do about that? And I'm glad. I mean, you're certainly Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. We're talking with him right now. You're doing a great job right now, just bringing this up to the forefront, being a proponent of school choice. But I've talked to some of these legislators on the Education Committee, and the Republicans, and I just don't understand why this plank is not being adhered to, is not being supported.
Well, they're scared of this, or they're scared of that back home. And First of all, we got to keep communicating. We got to communicate even louder. But the facts are so convincing, Paul. First of all, school choice.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
We're going to get to some video here in just a moment about what happened yesterday at the Capitol and the 92nd General Assembly. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be playing for you a recorded interview. We sat down with Victor Davis Hanson, or it was on the phone. Victor Davis Hanson, of course, you see him on Fox News probably every night, whether he's on Hannity or Tucker Carlson or Martha McCallum. He is Trump. His new book is The Case for Trump. It was out, I believe, on the 5th. A lot of people are talking about this. It's really, really good. We had a great sit-down interview. Of course, Victor Davis Hanson's also a farmer, so I invited him to Arkansas. I felt like that was only the polite thing to do because we would love to have him, right, guys? Okay, so let's talk about real quick before I get into this. I do want to mention something. The real argument against all these tax increases that, and we'll see what the final number is. Like, we're still waiting. The session's not over. I'm going to wait. I'm reserving final judgment until I can, till all the numbers are done. Meaning they're done. They have sine died, and we know the net tax increase, the net tax cut, or government staying the same size. I mean, if I was a betting man, I think I would know where I would bet, but that's just me. The real argument against tax increases is not that it costs an individual 3 cents more a gallon or 6 cents more a gallon or $25 more a year on their residence, but it's the mass amount it actually expands government when all of those small numbers are added together. It increases the power of government, which reduces the freedoms of individuals. That generally is why this is all such a bad idea. I really wish, I was telling somebody this the other day, I wish that every legislator was a conservative talk radio host or a former talk radio host. And I'm not just trying to, all I'm saying is I mean, I believe in these principles of limited government. I attempt to challenge my worldview as a conservative almost every day. Is this still what I believe? Now, given this situation, well, now this has changed. Is this still the right answer? Putting all of this into context. And I'm not suggesting that I'm perfect. I definitely don't get everything right all the time because no one does. But I'm just saying, I've thought to myself, and you know what? Call this an elitist mentality. But I can certainly point to all of the elitists that are the elites and their mentalities that are at the Capitol right now. I wonder, when's the last time some of these Republicans who have run on a Republican platform have read a book, a detailed, esoteric book about the freedoms of man. You know, like do they, like, how many of them would even be able to tell you, Frederick Bastiat's definition of legal plunder? You know, how many of them can name the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States? Versus how many of them just slapped an R on their name and went for it? I'm just telling you that to me, that's the difference. I think with the results that we're seeing now, and maybe I'm sorry if it comes across as elitist. That's just my thoughts. My thoughts on this day. Okay, let's talk about this bill that we talked about it yesterday. It made the scorecard. It's a bill by State Representative Jimmy Gazaway, and it has to do with forcing nonprofit organizations that participate in elections. They don't advocate for a candidate, but they do put out information, factual information that is, that where it can, they're talking about elections, judicial elections. Anyway, Jimmy Gazaway, it's HB 1705. He wants to force people to disclose their donors if you have a group like the Judicial Crisis Network. That's what we've seen here. And I told you at the beginning of the show that the maintenance of a free society is a difficult thing to maintain. It requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere. You want the definition of a temporary evil? Let's play this first cut. Here's State Representative Jimmy Gazaway presenting his bill that would require groups that participate in judicial elections, that put out, that disseminate information about a candidate. It would now be classified as an expenditure, and you'd have to disclose your donors. He cites the Judicial Crisis Network putting out factual information, but that it is misleading information. And he's right. Listen.
That these
the bill's
independent
wrong, but he's right.
committees
Listen.
have funded and ran, many of which have been misleading and completely unfair to the candidates involved. And I'll give you one example. In one of the last races, there were ads ran by a particular group that accused a judge of helping set a convicted child rapist free. This particular candidate set a rapist free, and now he is on the run and dangerous. Tell this candidate to be tough on crime and to protect our children. Now, one person's setting a convicted child rapist free is another person's judge who is honorably following the law and the Constitution and the dictates that the law and the Constitution demands. And if that means that error was committed at the lower court level, that judge is obligated to follow the law, whether he likes the result or not. And so these are the types of attacks that we have seen in our state on our judicial candidates, and as a result, that has affected the public's confidence in our state Supreme Court and Court of Appeals. These ads are misleading. Again, I don't believe for 1 second that the candidate in that case wanted to set a convicted child rapist free, that he was not necessarily tough on crime. But these are the types of tactics that these independent expenditure committees engage in. But they won't tell you to vote for or against a candidate, because that would be express advocacy, and that is currently prohibited under the current law. What they do instead is say, call this candidate and tell them that you don't like what they're doing, or tell this particular candidate to be tough on crime and to protect our children, as if that candidate didn't want to do that. So this gives you an example of the problem and what we're seeing in our state. It affects the public's perception of the judiciary and our courts as a whole. And so
all right. Go ahead and stop right there. So, again, that's State Representative Jimmy Gasaway. He's presenting this bill that is going to require people, it's going to expand the definition of an expenditure, going to require people to disclose their donors. These organizations have to disclose their donors. Now, folks, I disagree with this. I think it's anti-freedom of speech. I think we have to be able to freely associate. And the reason is, and it would do so in secret if need be, and that's what the law is now. The reason is because, folks, if you have to disclose your donors will be silenced. They will be persecuted. They will have their businesses attacked. That is what this is about. I'm not saying that's what, I don't think that's what Jimmy Gasaway wants. I think Jimmy Gasaway wants to correct a temporary evil. The temporary evils, you have Kenneth Hickson, that was the judge he's talking about, and they say, hey, he let a child rapist go. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a bad thing. Technically, that's true. That is what happened, but people don't, you can only, if you present only half the truth, you can mislead people. I'm not disputing that. There are temporary evils out there. I'm willing to put up with that, so that I am able to have my speech. Now, what about you? So that I'm able to donate who I want to, so that it could be I could be anti the government or whoever's in power now, and this group is going to expose the corruption, and then they find out that I've donated, and then they come after me, or they come after my business, or they do something to a family member of mine. This is all these things have happened in the state of Arkansas. If you go back far enough, like to 2013, wonder what happened in 2013. All right, Ryan Norris. Ryan Norris is the state director of Americans for Prosperity. He spoke against this bill. Go to cut number 2, Joe. I know you're listening. And go ahead and hit play whenever you are ready.
Mr. Norris, if you'll come to the table, identify yourself and who you're with, and you may make your statement.
I can do it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee, for hearing my testimony today. I would like to bring out just a couple points. Start off first, my name is Ryan Norris. I'm State Director for Americans for Prosperity. We are the liberty-loving, equal opportunity under the law group that everyone here has both the love and the hate relationship. And the reason being is because we are dedicated towards policy. We're about thoughts. We're about ideas. We're not about candidates. We're a nonpartisan organization, but we do have opinions on the policies that have been championed by certain candidates. And that would include, in this instance, appellate and Supreme Court, potentially. First, I would like to acknowledge that the reason that we're here is because there has been recognized that public discourse is at a low point, and we're trying to solve for that situation. I believe that this bill does not solve for that. And I would like to make the following points. We believe that House Bill 1705 will not improve public discourse or voter understanding of candidates. This is limited to the scope of the judicial, but these are the candidates that people know the least about. And we've just heard that this brings about in the mind of the general public a negative perception that they may be hearing about the Supreme Court. If we were to walk to the man on the street right now and ask them could they name our Supreme Court members, that would be very tough to do. The general public doesn't know that. So they rely on organizations, independent expenditures sometimes, to educate them as to the finer points of someone's judicial philosophy or how they've ruled. This bill also brings into question the ability to be free to choose to privately come together and bring people to join on a cause that they believe in without fear of intervention or retaliation by those in government. And as you just heard, we just heard comments saying this must be stopped, that we're narrowly focusing this so that we can limit speech, because we have to get really within the bounds of the law to narrow speech down. And this is problematic to us. we should try to protect all voices, particularly the marginalized. In this issue, Americans for Prosperity has been allied with groups such as the ACLU on this issue, who has also been litigating similar disclosure bills across the United States. Also, we have been allied with the NAACP and in some instances even Planned Parenthood, who don't want to disclose their donor list when they're in a state that potentially could be, find out who their donors are and potentially retaliate against them. So again, this expands the language so much. House Bill 1705 is so broad that it requires individuals to disclose the information of their name, their address, their occupation, and their employer. And the question was brought up, well, what's the difference between an independent expenditure and a candidate? The difference is that we're now asking people to register their thoughts, their opinions, and their ideals, not who they're supporting as a candidate, but they're asking now to have a government registry for how you think and how you believe based on who you support. And we cannot allow that to happen here in the state of Arkansas. I believe that this is a place that we should promote public discourse, and we should allow the private citizen to engage in the conversations they want to have with the people that they want to have and support who they want to have without fear of retaliations. Also, the reason that this is brought out, the question is, well, what will disclosure do? We just heard that that this will not limit the speech that independent expenditures could have. Well, then what's the point? What's the point? If it's not going to limit the speech, what will disclosing the donors actually resolve? Now, we've titled this as dark money. For Americans for Prosperity,
let me jump in here. All right, so that's Ryan Norris from Americans for Prosperity, and he went on to make some even better points. One of the main points that he made that maybe kind of earlier that I didn't get in here in time, but earlier he made the point that nobody even knows who our Supreme Court justices are. They don't know these judges. They rely on some of these groups to tell them that the election's even happening. Now, do you know who doesn't need to be educated? Meaning who already knows about the judicial elections? The Bar Association, attorneys, lawyers. The Bar Association actually, from what I can tell, helped write this bill or wrote the bill. The Bar Association was right there next to State Representative Gazaway saying that this is the bill they want. This is the same Bar Association, at least part of the Bar Association, wanted to appoint Supreme Court justices. Essentially, if you take away this right to assembly, this right to freely come together and advocate for a cause, and if that means putting out that Courtney Goodson, took a big yacht trip or whatever, if that's what that means, that's what it means. But essentially, what this is going to do is it's just going to keep the people in the dark. Continue this facade of electing judges that's really about a popularity contest and not about issues, ignoring that there are two competing judicial philosophies. And essentially, you're going to have the Bar Association and attorneys, knowing and protecting the status quo and knowing. Because, see, because attorneys all want to be judges someday, they think that they're the only ones that know what the qualities of a good judge are. It's very elitist. I'm using that term a lot this segment. All right, then we're going to hold here. We're going to keep going. Okay, meaning Joe, just hold with me here. I know I'm going over. Mr. Josh Waters also took to the end of that table. Josh was on the program yesterday telling us how this bill was bad. Now, it did pass out of the committee, but I just felt obligated to share with you that what I believe was a vigorous debate. It'll go before the House, and then it'll go over to the Senate side. Here is cut 3. Joe, this is Mr. Josh Waters. Listen to this.
By yourself?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Josh Waters. I'm an attorney for political strategies. We represent Conduit for Action and are opposed to this bill. I wanted to start with a quote about free speech from former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. He said, "Those who want our independence believed that the final end of the state was to make men free to develop their faculties, and that in its government and deliberate forces should prevail over the arbitrary. They valued liberty both as an end and as a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty. They believe that freedom to think as you will and to speak as you think are means indispensable to the discovery and spread of political truth. That without free speech and assembly, discussion would be futile. That with them, discussion affords ordinarily adequate protection against the dissemination of noxious doctrine. That the greatest menace to freedom is an inert people. That public discussion is a political duty, and that this should be a fundamental principle of the American government. I believe this bill puts a chilling effect on free speech. The definition of public perception of a candidate, I would argue, is any statement. Any statement I make, favorable or unfavorable, would fit within that definition of influencing the public perception of a candidate and would therefore trigger the disclosure of the donors of any person or organization that put out that statement. I also think a really bad part of this legislation is that it would allow opposing political groups or candidates themselves to basically haul in their political opponents into court through the private right of action that's created. I think it would turn into, you see a mailer or an ad, a post, here's something, a radio ad that is influencing the public's perception of a candidate or telling how a candidate voted or ruled on a decision, and that would then open the door, if they haven't disclosed as an independent expenditure, that would open the door for a lawsuit to say, hey, I'm suing to enforce compliance with this bill. I think what we would see is groups from the right and the left, special interests from the right and left, would haul their opponents into court to try to, I think the biggest part is to try to silence the speech that's being made, or at least delay it until after the campaign is over. I think that would probably be the clear tactic. But
all right, so we also had later in this testimony, we got to go to break now, but that was Josh Waters doing an excellent job as normal. We also had Graham Sloan of the Ethics Commission came down to that table and testified against, saying this language will not work, citing that he had already taken similar language. They had to take it out of some of their rules. So I would expect if this were to go through and pass, we're talking about somebody's going to sue at some point. Well, that's an understatement. We're going to take a break, folks. Don't go anywhere.
School choice benefits low-income kids who don't otherwise have choice. Wealthy people have choice, right? Wealthy people have school choice. What do I mean? They can choose to put their kid in this school or that school. Some of them even have the ability to move to another location to live in the district so that they have choice. Who doesn't have choice? People without the means to have choice.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is give people equal access to choice. So that's number one. Number two, the polling I've seen show that Arkansans support. Have a good day, John. Arkansans support
determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I was just listening to the Paul from the past that we had playing on the online side of things. We interviewed Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. You can watch that interview over at conduitnews.com. It's up right now on the front page. We were interviewing Tim Griffin on school choice, and I just caught the part where he said, wealthy parents already can choose where they want their kids to go. School choice is about not being confined to your zip code, not being disadvantaged just because of where you live. And, it's like, whoa, he said that. And then we have these 33 parents who were indicted yesterday. Among them, Aunt Becky from Full House, Uncle Jesse's wife, may be going to jail. I don't know if any of them will see any real jail time. But this huge scam where all of this all of these rich people are bribing and paying people off to get their kids into school, and now it's just incredible. I mean, if it doesn't reinforce, and I know it's college, it's higher education, and not traditional or K through 12, but still, man, I'm telling you, if that doesn't reinforce the need for deregulation, more freedom, more choice, I don't know what does.
People having the ability to choose where their kids go to school, overwhelmingly, and the idea that there's this big bear that's going to rise up and defeat people for standing up for our Kansas, it's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not true. And I will tell you this as well. A lot of teachers that I talk with support choice. I don't have a problem with choice. It's the union bosses. It's the union bosses that have trouble with choice.
Yep.
Because it erodes their power. But the union bosses are against merit pay. I mean, they're against anything that's max of innovation. If it's not the old way of doing things, the stale, old way of doing things that kept us where we are in so many places, then they're not for it. Because that's what they, the union bosses. So, there is broad support, particularly when you explain to parents that, hey, we're going to take care of your child the best way possible.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to communicate more, and we've got to make it known that we're going to elect Republicans who support choice.
Yep.
And I think that's what we've got to do. Parents aren't real concerned about an institution handling of a kid that's yet to be born, and the theory that, well, leave your kid in the school it's in because one day we'll get it together, and if you take them out, we won't be able to get it together. You know what I say to that?
Yeah.
My responsibility before God is my kid today, not in 30 years, today. So I'm not going to sacrifice. Parents aren't willing to sacrifice their kid today in the hopes that 30 years later you'll get your act together, right? So that's why parents won't release today. And school choice is part of that. It's really it's a solid, logically it's a solid argument.
Yep.
We just got to do a better job of educating.
You're right, and we're talking with Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin. I really appreciate you coming on, and I think innovation is key here. We can always do better, and people are afraid of change, and even incremental change, because this is only one step in the right direction. And Tim, I appreciate you coming on this morning and shedding some light on school choice.
Yes, sir. I'll mention this. Millennials and young people, and I'm not young,
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We have a really special treat for you guys again. Welcome back to the program. We have historian, you've seen him on the Fox News channel, Victor Davis Hanson is back with us on the line. Mr. Hanson, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Now, your book, it was out last week. It's called The Case for Trump, and I'm really excited about this. I was reading some reviews, You've got some great recommendations from people like Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, Mark Levin. He said, quote, a brilliant, embracing analysis from one of the great thinkers and writers of our time and a farmer to boot, Victor Davis Hanson. Hanson understood the circumstances that gave rise to Donald Trump early on, how the president has made long overdue changes, and why his enemies seek to destroy him. Some pretty high praise, sir.
Yeah, well, it's anybody who writes a dispassionate analysis, so it's not. I'm not part of the rah-rah or Trump's, Satan. He's not a Satan or a saint. He's turned out to be a very unlikely but successful candidate in a way nobody imagined, and then he defied all expectations by being a pretty good president, at least solving problems that had not been solved. And if you look at 3% economic growth or near record peacetime unemployment or record energy production, that in a way nobody had anticipated, and that gets people very angry. I noticed that in the Never Trump Bulwark, I was called a Nazi last week basically a Nazi for writing the book. So I expected that, but it's been a pretty polarizing week for the first week that the book's in print. You get praise, but get very angry people as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the other reviews that I read about how Never Trumpers aren't going to be happy with this, and then of course those people who are out to get Trump, they're not going to be happy with those on the traditional left. They're not going to be happy with this either, and that's because you've approached somebody like Donald Trump, the history that we've just seen. You're approaching it as a historian. That's what you do.
Yeah, I tried to have the book argue how did somebody with the first serious candidate without political and military experience, how did he defeat first 16 really qualified Republican primary candidates, craft a conservative, traditional Republican message in the sense of, traditionalist judges that he would appoint, deregulation, get rid of Obamacare, tax reform, but he added these wrinkles to it about secure the border, stop illegal immigration. Don't worry, China's not going to take over the world. We can stop it. It's cheating. It's asymmetrical mercantile trade. The red state interior is not hollowed out for good. It's been a victim of bad decision-making. We'll restore cities like Milwaukee and Cleveland, Cincinnati. These are our workers, our, we use that word a lot, our, and we have to worry about them. They're not meth heads. You don't write them off. And then he also added to all of that, when we go overseas, we have to look at things in a cost-benefit analysis. We can't just do these optional engagements where, even when we're successful on the ground, in tactical engagements, we don't translate that to lasting strategic advantage. And that message was really geared to the states that were, I'm out here in California, and that's never going to flip red, and Texas is not going to flip blue in the immediate future. But those states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, the left thought that they were pretty much purple becoming blue, and that message that Trump had really resonated. And then the final thing is he was a strange messenger. He didn't change his accent like Hillary did when she went into Arkansas or the South, or Barack Obama did in the inner city, or he didn't put on camouflage and go duck hunting like John Kerry had, or he didn't go to the Indiana State Fair with jeans. He had that strange suit, Queen's accent, orange skin, weird hair, wherever he went. And people who were in the working class said, I not only like the message, but this guy talks like one of us, and he doesn't change. So whatever you think about him, he's authentic. And that nobody was prepared for that. And I think Trump saw that. He had an animal cunning. I don't mean animal in a pejorative sense, but a very instinctual view of what people were tired of. And they were tired of all these things you can't say, you can't do, and then America's in decline, and you just have to accept it. And you didn't build that. It's not the time to profit, and America's got to apologize. So he astounded the political class, and he did after he took office. Just think of all the things they tried to do to stop him. I was counting them up in the book. I mean, remember they sued in 3 states on the voting machines, and they went to the emolument clause, and they introduced articles of impeachment, those ads telling the electors not to vote in the Electoral College, and 25th Amendment, Logan Act.
Yeah,
Powell's coup by McCabe.
Yeah, we now know that whole 25th Amendment thing. We have McCabe out there saying that they were lobbying members of the cabinet, trying to figure out if they could get any of them to go along with the 25th Amendment coup, essentially. Now, you mentioned all of those people who've gone against them. In your book, you compare it to the Ancien regime. Tell us about that.
Well, in history, there's been societies in France and Constantinople, Spain, where a permanent class of bureaucrats, administrators get so large that they exist not to implement the policy of the ruler or the elected official, but to perpetuate themselves. So we're seeing that in Washington. We've got, I think, nationwide, state, local, but in Washington, altogether, about 25 million people work for government. And whether it's regulators or the IRS or whichever bureaucracy we're talking about, they have all the resources, and they go after individuals with unlimited government resources. And the individual bureaucrat is protected usually from being fired. So people feel they don't trust government. They're afraid of government. It gets larger and larger. They pay more taxes, and yet they get fewer services. So when Trump comes in as somebody who is not part of the political class, and he says that he wants to do all these strange things, make NATO accountable, make them pay their fair share, deregulate, open up ANWR, all of these EPA or foreign policy wonks, Council on Foreign Relations, Government Department at Harvard, Brookings Institute, Sierra Club, whatever all these groups are, and the media in connection with the government, they go ballistic. And I think that explains they thought that they had a moral right, that their lofty ends were so noble to get rid of Trump that they could use any means necessary to implement them. So they diluted a FISA court, the DOJ and the FBI did, but not telling the true nature of the Steele dossier, and they surveilled American citizens. They put an informant in the Trump campaign. They had a member of the Justice Department's wife working on this dossier. I think it's 22 now, Justice or FBI officials have had to resign. They talked about, or were reassigned. They talked about an insurance policy to either abort the Trump campaign or to make sure the presidency didn't work. They unmasked names of people who were surveilled. They went after officials, tapped their phone. They tapped the president's phone and leaked it. And so I think that part of the Mueller investigation, because I don't think they will find any collusion, but part of its mission was to create so much hysteria about collusion that they got Mueller rushed in, and in a preemptive fashion. We haven't talked about all of the abuses by the ancient regime or the deep state, and there are plenty. And I think maybe when Mueller shuts down, finally Trump can tell his lawyers, I'm going to start unredacted releases of this information. Mm-hmm. And I want to know why, Samantha Power on 260 occasions asked to unmask names, and those names were leaked to the press, or why James Comey on 245 occasions in Congress said he didn't know or couldn't remember under testimony. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of legal exposure there in the effort to destroy Trump that we don't really talk about because of Mueller. But once that offensive ends, I think you'll see a new twist to things.
You are I think you're exactly right. We're talking with historian Victor Davis Hanson. His new book is out now. You need to check it out. It's called The Case for Trump. You're exactly right, Victor. He said he was going to release the FISA application. I've interviewed Devin Nunes, also one of Arkansas's congressmen who's on the House, the permanent House Select Committee on Intelligence as well. And they want these documents released eventually. But I do think had Trump released them before the Mueller report, the media wouldn't necessarily have to cover the substance, and they may not, in fact, even after the report. But, it would look like they could say, well, he's just going after those who are trying to go after him.
You're absolutely right. I made that argument. Well, but once the Mueller thing is over, I think we can finally address situations like the sitting Department of Justice official meeting in a stealthy conference with Bill Clinton, whose wife was under investigation. Andrew McCabe claiming he didn't have a conflict of interest when he was the chief investigator of Hillary's email scandal, when just 3 months before his wife had received $600,000+ in Clinton-related tax. There was all these things were going on, and we're asked to just forget about them because of Mueller. Well, when Mueller's over with, I don't know what the Democrats are going to do, because without Mueller and the collusion charge, they're going to have I know they have all these investigations, but they're going to be fragmented. They're going to be going after taxes, and a lot of Americans are going to get tired of it. Can you imagine Barack Obama negotiating the Iran deal in 2015 if the Republicans had called in Reggie Love, his bag man, and said, "Hey, Reggie, did you guys play cards the night of the bin Laden raid, as you said at the press conference, because the president was bored?" Or, "Hey, here's Tony Resco. He gave Obama a sweetheart land deal. Did Obama pay taxes on that gift?" And I don't think people would have liked that when the President of the United States is even negotiating a flawed deal. So at some point, I think the Democrats are going to have to give up. But in their defense, they decided to go full socialist with reparations and infanticide, Green Deal, wealth tax, high 90% bracket tax, Medicare for everybody, open borders, abolish ICE. Those are issues that are only polling about 20%, 30% approval. And if they want to go full socialism, Trump is going to, he's going to tell American people, last time they wanted Hillary and you didn't want, even if you didn't agree with me, you didn't want Hillary Clinton, and now he's going to be able to say, I may be a little crass sometimes, but listen, American voter, I'm the only thing between you and socialism.
Can you see a scenario where, from a historical perspective, I know we're not there yet, but in hindsight's 2020 once we get there. But speaking of 2020, the 2020 elections, the Democrats taking back control of the House of Representatives, it may just, in fact, remind everybody how much they disagree with the Democrat Party because of the things they're doing, the anti-Semitism resolution that kind of wasn't it ended up being, I think, anti-Semitic. How does this, and in your book, The Case for Trump, how does that, how does the 2020 race look for you?
Well, I think it looks pretty good, and I talked about that. And I think we got to remember that they took back the House because in about 35 seats in California, they lost about 8 seats to Republicans. But all over the country, most of those people who won, even in California, I'm in a district that flipped, they didn't run on what I just talked about or you talked about. It was, let's get health care, generic health care. Let's get a middle-class tax deal. And they ran a lot of veterans. And those people ran as moderates. They don't get much attention. But the people who were taking the party leftward, they were in safe, hard left seats in Minnesota or Michigan or New York. And so what the Democrats are sort of, and the problem is that their left wing has no general support in a general election. But they're the ones driving it. And there's all these other people in Trump congressional districts that Trump carried that did win. And I think they're going to flip. I think people are going to say, you know what? I may have voted for you 2 years ago, but whether you like it or not, I want to know. And their opponent will say to them, are you for infanticide in Syria, if it happens? Are you for reparations? Are you for the new Green Deal? Are you for abolishing ICE? Are you for giving my Medicare to everybody, even if they haven't paid in for it? Are you for open borders? Are you against the wall? And I think that's going to be very hard for them to answer those questions, and that they can attribute that to all of these hardcore socialists that are preaching to their own congressional choirs. So I think Trump's got a really good deal, and that's just them. If you look at Trump himself, I think you're seeing that he's speaking better. He's finally got a foreign policy team with Bolton and Pompeo that he feels comfortable with. Barr is a much better attorney general. He's got more discipline. He's a better speaker. And I think if he starts to address the one thing he hasn't addressed is the debt and the deficit and out-of-control spending, but he's talking about that. So I just think that he's getting better and his opponents are getting worse. And they're headed over the cliff led by this Pied Piper,
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and they don't know how to stop us. They do not know how to stop us.
Oh, my goodness. He's Victor Davis Hanson, folks. The book is The Case for Trump. He's a historian. This is an objective look, in my opinion. This is not, just rah-rah propaganda. I'm sure, well, you know what, Victor, if you got called a Nazi last week after the release of this book, there's a growing list of people that get lumped into that category, and it really is the fringes, it's quite unfortunate. But I really appreciate you coming on the program, and I hope everybody goes out and gets your book, sir.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And I understand you're a farmer, and is where we got a lot of farmers. We got a lot of farmers in Arkansas, so you are welcome here anytime.
Well, I'm prejudiced, but I believe farmers are the salt of the earth. They made the country, and I hope they don't disappear. It's tough being a farmer, but I admire them so much.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you coming on, sir. You have a great day.
You too.
All righty. Thanks. Victor Davis Hanson, everybody. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment. Tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive PC neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
50, but the world favors individual choice of what's best for each individual. And you can look at the smartphone. Everybody's smartphone is different. Everybody wants to choose what they want to choose. So this idea of choosing versus being told by the government is very much a today idea. And people that fight flexibility and parental choice will be on the losing side of history. There is no question about it. Choice is coming to the whole country one way or the other, because not because of me or other political people, politicians, elected officials, because parents are going to demand it if they're not already.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thanks for what you do, and let's keep talking about it.
All right, let's do it. Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, everybody. While he's dropping his kids off at school, you heard him tell somebody that he loved them and have a good day, talking about school choice.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator. On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Yeah, for continuing coverage of the 92nd General Assembly, please visit conduitnews.com. We'll have updates as well as a Facebook page, facebook.com/conduitnews. Just looking at the weather for today, it looks like it is raining in Fort Smith. It's going to be, it looks like there's some showers even down towards Texarkana. It looks like there may be some severe weather approaching, the western part of the state, like a whole strip of it, actually. And this is just on the future predictions. And then it's going to move really just across the entire state throughout the day today. So just be careful. Be mindful that there may be some severe weather, especially in light of what happened to our countrymen down in Alabama. Be very, very careful, mindful. Listen to your, local weather authorities. Watch it for yourself, and take shelter if necessary. Folks, continuing with my thesis, my hypothesis that the left is anti-comedy. TheHill.com is reporting that former NBC Tonight Show host Jay Leno said Tuesday that he doesn't miss hosting the late night show and lamented that everyone has to know your politics now. He doesn't miss it because essentially it's just not fun anymore. I mean, my goodness, comedy, the late night shows. What do you see? Jimmy Kimmel and just crying sometimes. If there's whatever tragedy is in the news, he's going to open his monologue with it and then cry about it. It's just not a place you go to laugh anymore. And I heard this the other day that Jimmy Fallon, very talented guy, Jimmy Fallon and his the Tonight Show, really funny guy, but all that changed when Hillary Clinton lost. The show's not funny anymore. I mean, Jay Leno here, I'm sure he doesn't miss it. He's probably like, wow, I got out. Jay Leno would be off the air with some of his jokes. He said this, quote, "I kind of used Johnny's model, Johnny Carson. People couldn't figure out. Well, you and your Republican friends. Well, Mr. Leno, you and your Democratic buddies. And I would get hate mail from both sides equally." That's exactly right. But when people see you as one-sided, it just makes it tough. And plus, I did it when, Clinton was horny and Bush was dumb, and it was just a little easier. Now it's all very serious. Yeah, it's almost like these leftist coastal elites, these Hollywood types, they think their entire way of life is under attack. I don't know. Maybe it is. The Justice Department prosecuting these Hollywood actresses. I mean, it's been going on since 2011, according to the reports. And how long have the indictments just been sitting there sealed up? How long have they known about all of this? How many more parents might go down? How many more colleges? How widespread is it? I bet it's much more widespread than what we know. Arkansas, be safe. 90-second General Assembly.